another chill stream with Matterall. We're going to be talking about patch notes today. We'll also be looking into some things that are going on around EVE Online. Like, war in the south looks like it might be starting a few days early. We'll talk about the constraints that are being broken now between Winter Coalition and Legacy. Also want to talk about crossing zebras, or as they say, crossing zebras. That's like a publication that's more or less going into hibernation after having years of success, but mostly as a metaphor to the amount of energy that very interesting. The amount of energy that it happens at the beginning of something, and then how it kind of dwindles, dark, and then essentially closes. Reminds me of the stars, almost like the lifespan of a star when it begins to die. It heats up and fades away. So, so do organizations, so do corporations. And get into that meta talk. All right, well, thanks for watching this VOD. We'll leave it here on Twitch. We'll also put it on YouTube. I don't think it'll make it to podcast because it's just be too much material on podcasts. And this is just supposed to be relaxed. All right, we got some people in chat at least, so let's say hello to them. I guess we have some people can't make the hour because they're still finishing up work in Europe. Here in the United States, they're going to work or at work. It's a strange time to do this sort of thing, but it works for me because it's on Pacific time, which means I should be in work in about 10 minutes. I'll go in late. And it's just, we're really close to people getting off of work in Europe. So if we go long, we might get some people. But we'll see. All right, let's look at patch notes. First thing I'll do is show you guys the one major thing that's happened, and that is for character sheets, if you are lacking a skill, like this skill I do not own, you can actually buy it and train it without a book. And it costs you 30% more than usual for that convenience. I guess they call that a convenience. But it's totally worth it for these smaller, very cheap skills that used to not be able to train if you weren't near a place to buy the skill book. Now you can just train it wherever you are, even in wormhole space. I have to imagine that that is very helpful. Let me turn up the mic since I sound quiet. And here as well.
It costs 30% more.
Yeah, it's a markup of 30% for the convenience fee.
It's 30%.
Oh,
yeah.
Hey, Killer B.
I used to make good money taking the expensive skill books from a school to Jita and selling them for 15 to 20% markup. So that's still going to be around, I guess.
Yeah.
One thing I want to point out too. Hello everyone.
Hi, Tezzy.
The official EVE Online Twitter account, and I quote, "The release sees the introduction of the first part of Skills on Demand with changes to skill pricing coming later this week."
This week? Oh, that's...
yeah. So the increases you see are the 30% addition if you want to do the lazy way and buy it through the skill, interface. But the actual skill book price balance is coming later this week, presumably in like a server side patch they'll do maybe like Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday.
Are you gonna
going up?
You gonna speculate on it, or is it going up? Going
no,
down?
I don't think it's smart. I think maybe the only ones that would be smart to speculate on is the really cheap ones. I don't know. I just don't. I think there's too much danger in it because a lot of your veteran players that have a ton of ISK already have them all, and your guys that can't, I just don't think there's that huge of a market for it.
I think it's a huge risk.
Yeah, I agree. Most of your I'm not the Albert Einstein of economics shit. Mostly everything I do has been taught to me by other people, and all of the people that are within Goon Swarm that are really, really smart about this sort of thing are all not going anywhere near it. So I think that's probably a smart route to.
Yeah, yeah. I've thought of it because it seems so tempting, right? Like there's going to be a price change on something that's fixed, so it's a clear victory if it goes up in price and you own the books, but it's just I don't know how it's going to go. It seems too.
There's too much scope for variability here. It's not a case of they're saying they're going to increase everything. They're saying they're going to change everything. So that could, say they could reduce some skill books, shock horror.
Also, before, a lot of people would make their money because they would take a skill book that's like 100,000 ISK, and they would ship it out to nullsec and sell it for a couple billion ISK. And yeah, it's a huge markup in percentages, but everyone's willing to pay a couple million because hey, it's only a couple. What CCP effectively has done with this change is put a hard cap of 30% margins on all books, because it will be a base cost of 30% over whatever the market is.
Which is not a terrible amount. Like most, I'm thinking, like if you're looking at, like, say, carrier skill books, it's. Sorry, my phone went off. It's 500 million for a carrier skill book. If you add 30% onto that, that makes it 650 million. At that sort of price point, there'll be a lot of people that will be looking at saying, is it worth me taking a trip to a school system for it? Is it worth me using my jump clone for the day just to save that 150 million ISK? So people saying that the 30% cap is a bad thing, I don't think there was that many skill books selling for more than that, in all honesty.
But as long as we have CSM member Killer B here, I want to see if I can take advantage of some questions. Somebody asks if there's going to be a nerf to anomalies. That was, let's see here.
That was patched today, yeah.
Yeah, there was one today.
So far, from what people are seeing, it looks to be around 12 minutes across the board.
Can you explain what 12 minutes?
No, it's between. No, it's an average of 15 minutes with a variation of 3 minutes.
Okay, that makes more sense, because there was some people that got
12, it can be 18, it can be 15.
Before they had, so Kilo, when was the last nerf they did? That was like 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah, they did one a couple of months back.
Yeah, so prior to the previous nerf, all anomalies across the board had a 5-minute respawn. And then when they did the previous nerf, some of them jumped up as much as 10 minutes, some were as little as 6, but it was between 6 and 10 minutes on those respawn. And if you go look at like January and February's MER, you can clearly see a decrease in the amount of ISK making it into the game, and that can be, that can be attributed to any number of things, but I think that the anomaly nerfs played a part in that. It could also be from increased botting and all sorts of other things. But you will also see in that same graph I'm talking about a big drop-off from the ISK supply in late January to mid-February when they did that security blog, and that shows all the botters they banned. So you'll see a big drop-off there. And then I think with these nerfs coming today, it'll be interesting to look at April's MER and May's MER to see how much of an impact these nerfs coming in today will have made, because I think 2 months is a good amount of time to look at it and see a clear, results in the data from the nerf.
Yeah, the MER. You call it the MER, I'll call it the MER.
Yeah, well, whatever
Monthly
people call it,
economic
MER.
Report. MER's fine.
Yeah, that thing.
Where should I be looking to see the drop in?
I forget what graph it is.
Top 8 sinks and faucets over time.
Yeah, that
one to look at that one.
Basically, it shows total ISK supply in the game. Like, so one thing people frustrates me.
Keep going down.
That there's people that don't understand what a sink is. Basically, if I sell something to another person, I'm just moving ISK from my wallet to his wallet. The ISK hasn't went away; it's still in the game. An ISK sink is when ISK is removed from the game permanently. Something like, market fees that get paid to CCP, shit like that, is literally taking ISK out of the game and it's not coming back. things that are putting money into the game, like faucets, are like bounty fees from ratting. Yeah, bounty fees is probably the biggest one. I think the LP store counts as one too, right? Or am I?
LP store counts as a sink.
Sink, yeah, I knew it was one or the other. So there are certain things that take it out, and there's certain things that add it, and everything else, including like mining, for instance, is literally just moving ISK from one person to another. It's not really affecting the supply.
Except ships destroyed.
That's neither an ISK sink or a faucet.
It's not. Yeah, you're not removing ISK. You're removing materials, which is not ISK.
It's an indirect sink because you have to pay for insurance, you have to pay for manufacturing costs. They're the sinks in the game, and the faucets. So your bounty taxes, your incursion payouts, your mission rewards, that's all stuff that's a faucet into the game. Same as insurance payouts when you lose the ship.
Yeah.
But sinks are stuff like your manufacturing taxes, your broker fees, LP store costs to get the items. They're all the sinks.
In fact, a large dread bomb of cheap fit dreads is actually a huge ISK faucet, because all of those dreads are going to be insured, and that's a massive amount of ISK coming back into the game from the insurance of those dreads. You would think, oh, 200 billion dread bomb, that's a big ISK sink. Nope, that's a faucet.
Yeah, 200 billion ISK on Z-Kill would probably cost an alliance 30 billion, maybe 35.
Yeah, we were actually. I won't get into too much detail here, but we had a policy discussion recently within Goonswarm leadership with regards to some SRP stuff, and like I think right now the platinum insurance on a dread is something like, I don't know, 350 to 450 million, and you're going to get paid out like I don't know, it's like 1.4, 1.6 billion, 1.3 billion. Yeah. So basically, between the cost of your platinum insurance and to pay for the rest of your fit to be the difference from the payout is just 400 or 500 million ISK. So yeah, you take a big whelp like that and take like 20%, maybe 30% of that value, and that's what the actual cost to the players is to replace those ships, assuming they're all insured.
So I'm looking at the sinks and faucets, and I'm looking at bounty prizes, and they look like these little squares. I can't show the grid, but these little squares each represent 1 month, and you can see there's a slide down for the last 2 weeks. So when did the last nerf happen?
A couple months ago. I think it was before Christmas in the fall.
So that would be right? So it peaked right about here, and since then the nerfs have made it looks like it's trending down, and they've nerfed it again, so that will probably continue to slide that down.
Like Tootsie said, there's multiple factors that play into that as well. It's not just the Anom nerfs, but also they've increasingly banned more and more botters recently. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, they have had a much more aggressive stance in the last couple of months towards botters and stuff like that. So those play into that, and a bunch of other factors. But yeah, it's definitely part of it.
In the MERM, Matterall, pull up the next chart down from the one you were looking at, the one that's money.
Okay.
That will more clearly show you it's not as spiky as the graph you're looking at. Okay. And it's a much longer timeline.
So I'm scrolling down.
It's the one that's labeled money supply.
Yeah, here it is.
Right. Be very careful with that graph, because that has a lot of historical data as well. So that can be misleading.
Look at the far right side of that, just that last little hump. Mm-hmm. If you look at, see that big drop off there in late January to mid-February, that was the banning of all the bots. Because remember, when a botter is banned, all the stuff on their wallet gets technically removed from the game, and it gets taken out of the money supply.
So that's a lot of accumulated wealth. What are those increments? Trillions. Actually, they're hundreds of trillions.
Someone yesterday, and take this as a grain of salt, I'm getting this secondhand, had estimated around 60 to 70 trillion ISK was removed in that.
Yeah, if each of these intervals here is 100 trillion. That looks to be about half. So I would say 50 trillion is pretty accurate. That looks like about half of a.
But look at the overall. So look at the slope of that graph overall. If you take that hump out, it's continuing upwards.
Yeah.
So this is CCP saying we need to further, tighten up the faucet a little bit, because whether it be from botters or just ratters or whatever, there's still, ISK is still coming at an upward slope into the game, which is going to do things like increase the price of Plex. It's going to do all sorts of stuff.
Well, this is the problem. This is the problem is everyone's going, oh, the faucets are the problem. Actually, the problem is there's no sinks in the game. If anything, they've just with Citadels, they've removed one of the bigger ones with taxes, because taxes, when you bought stuff in Jita 4.4, went to NPCs and just disappeared into the ether. When you buy it through player-owned structures, you pay the broker's fee, that disappears into the ether. But the taxes you pay goes back into corporation wallets. So there's one ISK sink they've removed from the game. So when people are saying we need to tighten up the faucets, I would actually argue is actually we need more ISK sinks in the game.
I would say that I don't know. This is just me pulling this out of my ass right now, so it's probably not well thought through. But they could do something where you're not allowed to put a market module on a Citadel within so far away from Jita or something like that, to force it all back into stations. Which, on the one hand, I think there's positives and negatives to that. You're eliminating a bunch of, I hate this word, content of the fighting going on in perimeter. But at the same time, you would be, restoring the market, assuming everyone continued to use Jita. I could also see that resulting in like the market moving from Jita to somewhere else where you could put markets down again.
Yeah, I hate that word too. One more time, I'm going to help some people that are kind of new to the theorizing of EVE Online. The sinks and faucets are just what you think. Sinks is water coming into the basin, so that's money coming into the game. And sorry, did I just say sink? Faucet.
Other way around.
Yeah, faucet is letting the water in. So faucet is what creates money in the game. So that would be things like bounties from killing NPCs. That is money that comes out of nowhere into the game. And the resources that spawn, like an asteroid, are potential money coming into the game, because those get mined and then those have a value, but they were spawned out of nothing. So that's faucets letting the water in.
No.
Hold on. Hold the fuck on and let me finish this, and then you guys can continue. Then you have the sinks or the drains, and that is the money leaving the basin, and that is skill book costs are a hard sink. That means you pay for that to this ether and it goes away. So the point of a faucet and a sink is money coming into the game, created out of nowhere, money leaving the game, coming out or going into nowhere. In between there is the basin where all the water is, and that's money that goes between players in different forms through trades and stuff like that. And okay, now you guys can like put some nuance on that.
Minerals aren't a faucet.
Yeah, mining in any description does not introduce ISK into the game.
Yeah, sorry about the cursing. I felt like I needed to like really hold the reins there. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. It's just we jumped in because mining in any form or any source of mining, moon mining, belt mining, whatever, not an ISK faucet or ISK sink in the game at all. All it does is transfers ISK because it has a value. Yeah. Sorry.
If you add more tritanium, there's more tritanium to go around, and therefore people are going to have less. There's going to be more supply of tritanium. So demand of tritanium is going to go down because there's just going to be way more out there. So the price of it's going to go down. But all you're doing is moving ISK that's in the game from one person's wallet to another in various ways from that result. Like, it's not adding more ISK to the game.
Now, it's a different story when you mine minerals or you mine ore, and you produce T1 battleships with it, you insure them, and you build them up, and then you make ISK into the game.
There is a point, and this happens occasionally, that when mineral prices get so cheap that there's a threshold, and I think CCP makes adjustments to insurance payout when this happens. I know they have done it in the past, but let's say, for instance, there's a capital ship. I'm not going to get into specifics here to make this simple. There's a capital ship that pays out platinum insurance at 100 billion ISK. You know, if you blow it up, you get 100. Not 100 billion. Let's say a billion ISK back. And platinum insurance to pay, you know, costs 100 million ISK to get that 1 billion. And if minerals get cheap enough, it becomes cheaper to build the ship and then blow it up to get that insurance payout than it does to actually sell the minerals. Whenever that happens, you'll see CCP, and I'm not sure if they do this manually or if it's automatically calculated based on mineral prices every 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month or something, but you'll see the insurance payout gets adjusted to prevent that from happening.
That's insurance fraud, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
That's what it's
people use the word fraud because it's fraud in real life to do that, but it's completely a legit gameplay tactic in game. It's just, like for instance, there was a faction. I think there was a faction Dreadnought for a while that maybe is still the case, that you'll see occasionally people like fit them with fireworks launchers and stuff and go out and blow them up, and they're like, "Lol, look at this 30 billion S loss, or 5 billion S loss or something." I don't know how much they're worth, but the reason they do it is the insurance payout is worth more than the cost to build it, so people build them just to blow them up to get the ISK back.
Yeah, Killer B, this video that you sent, is that like a sample of insurance fraud kind of thing, or?
Yeah, this is a friend of mine, an friend of mine, basically blowing up, I don't know how many scorpions it is, a bunch, and getting like a 26 billionist tick of doing that. So
he's made all these.
It's worth it right now with T1 battleships and with the Orca as well, if you do it right.
Did he bomb them?
Yeah, he bombed them with the super carrier. So basically you just build them all, then you eject them all from your citadel that you built them in, and then you need to launch 3 of the super carrier micro bombs or whatever at them. They all blow up, and if you can see at the bottom of the video, you see those big green numbers. He gets 2 ticks, 1 10 billion ISK one, 1 16 billion ISK one, and he just turned his ore into 26 billion ISK right there, and that's when mining becomes an ISK faucet, which is why this is technically a big problem. Luckily, it's not very publicly known that this is worth it if you do it right now. So not a lot of people are abusing it, but I feel like at some point in future, a lot of people are going to know about it, and then it'll be a problem, and I'm sure then CCP will do something about it.
Yeah.
Well, usually they do something about it when it's too late, but let's hope they do something about it this time before it gets broken.
It all depends on the value of the ores. Like, I know certain entities where ore prices are lower than what Jita values than that, and when you get to certain points, as Tuzzy was sort of alluding to, once you get to the certain points, it becomes more worth, rather than shipping your ores out, is to build them into T1 battleships and do the things that you do there. It just makes more sense. It's far easier. It gets you more ISK, etc., 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 rather than trying to sell them and then getting maybe as much, sometimes even less than what you'd get from the insurance payout.
Yeah, for an individual, I don't necessarily care about the individual if he makes money or not and how much he makes. The difference is what Tutsi and the other people explained earlier was mining isn't a faucet, because you put more titanium into the game and then they basically sell that titanium, and it's just a transaction of money between players. But if you do it this way, you introduce new money into the game, because you basically turn the minerals into ships, and then you blow them up, and the insurance money that you get paid out doesn't come from another player. It comes from the nowhere, like bounties. So you basically introduce a new amount of money into the game, which if you sell the minerals conventionally is not the case.
Yeah, it happens every so often. I can remember an instance sometime maybe last year or maybe late 2017 where people were doing it with freighters but I mean, minerals got really cheap. I mean, I think titanium was down to like less than 2 ISK per in Delve.
There are spreadsheets that basically do the math, and right now it's pretty good for all the T1 battleships and the Orca. The Orca is one of the bigger ships that's worth doing it with as well. But yeah, like there's, it's obviously still some sort of effort, but yeah, it can be done.
Well,
yeah, that was interesting.
The thing about it is, how is the insurance calculated? Did we talk about that to show how that works?
I have no idea how the insurance is calculated. I think some formula that CCP made up.
I think it's like it has a lag time of about 3 months, I believe, and for the insurance to calculate. And so if you have a ship that becomes cheaper to build, the insurance is still at a high rate for when it used to be built, which was more. Now it's built for less. So when you blow it up, you're actually making money. I think that's how it works. And I think the lag time is 3 to 6 months. So there's moments where something drops in price that its insurance is going to pay really well, better than it should, for a while. And then that adjusts and catches up.
Yeah, the speed that the mineral prices have to crash effectively to do that is quite significant though. So it's not a case of, oh, you know, titanium has fallen like 0.3 of an ISK, it's now available to, you know, start self-destructing T1 battleships. It has to, you know, go down, you know, a good 30% over a very short amount of time for it to be viable, for the insurance fraud trick to be really viable. A lot of people do the insurance fraud trick just to make it easy for themselves, because some of these people will mine quite obscene amounts of ore, and if they have no way of making it into ships that people want to buy because markets are saturated, there's no wars going on, etc, 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 and they're just sitting on stockpiles, it makes sense for them, because I know Goons did it once with Charons, where they will literally just go away and go, I can't build ships that anyone wants to buy because, you know, everything is so cheap. I'm just going to insurance fraud them just to get the ISK out of it.
Well, it's also when you have so much, as Tuzzy was saying, and also as Killer B was showing, when you have so much in minerals, those can't really move around. So minerals are stuck where they're mined when it becomes obscene amounts of minerals. And it's not worth moving that stuff. So you need to do something with it. And you can sit there and just build, or you can build it into something you can destroy to liquidate it into actual ISK. And then the ISK can move around all around the universe. So you don't actually have the same problem you do with minerals that have a physical or a metaphysical space that they take. Anyway, so let's move on. That was the MER that we were talking about and how there was a drop because somebody asked if the anomalies had been nerfed. And they have been nerfed a second time. Is that right, Killer B? Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was they did it once previously, a couple of months back, probably around Christmas, a little bit before that. Now they did it again. Looks like we have a respawn rate of an average of 15 minutes. I'm just testing it with Havens. I don't know what the other anoms look like, but on Havens at least it looks like the average respawn time is 15 minutes, and it looks like it's a variation of around 3 minutes. So you can get 12-minute respawns, but you can also get 18 minutes respawns. So basically 15-minute Haven respawns.
It's what I'm hearing for rally points as well in other areas, I suppose.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, funnily enough, is still enough to, like, it's still not enough. Like, I can still chain boson Havens without a problem.
Chain boson.
It just makes it now that people have to spread out, because before you could comfortably get 2 or 3 supers into one system. Now it's 1, maybe 2 supers at most on some of the very good systems. So you're forcing that next person out to another system where if you're already full in that other system, they now have to move to another system, and so on and so forth.
There we go.
I got about 20 minutes, so if you want to cover some little politics, we could go over that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we start where you want to start? What do you think is the biggest thing on the map right now?
Well, the biggest thing, I would just go like real quick what happened on Sunday. A darkness, and it's very worth mentioning here that it's darkness on their own. It's not the entirety of GOTG or Dead Coalition. It's not Siberian Squad. It's just Darkness Alliance have deployed out of Decline into Mela, which is sort of close to Geminate, with the intention to harass Horde and Geminate. So that's an interesting change. It's probably worth mentioning that their move up was on a Sunday night, EU prime time, and they had 180 people in it, which is not very impressive. So we'll have to see how much they can actually accomplish with those kind of numbers against Horde. But that has happened. And obviously yesterday the big news which is probably the way bigger thing than the Darkness deployment. Yesterday Who was it? Somebody killed a fort. I think Fraternity and allies killed a Fortizar of XIX in a system bordering FRT's home region or something like that. And basically, Willy has made an alliance update. I posted that alliance update in the TIS Discord yesterday, and he basically had a bunch of herf blurf, and then he said, "Well, the nip with Fraternity is now over. Prepare for an invasion." And
That's not what
we'll
I said
likely.
at all, to be fair.
Well, he didn't say it was over.
Well, so
Literally what you said.
Billy jumped in.
No.
So let's let Killer B actually finish, and then Billy can say what he's
No,
saying.
I was pretty much done. He just made like an alliance update, and yeah, then I guess we're gonna see the nip between Legacy and Fraternity was supposed to end, I think, on the 22nd anyways. So everything kind of just moved forward by 10 days, I guess. But yeah, that happened yesterday. Other than that, I think everything's pretty much the same.
I saw that, which is huge news. And now we have Billy in here along with Ron. Can you update us on what happened and what's going to happen?
So XIX anchored a Fortizar the day before yesterday. Came out yesterday in their home region of Tenerifis, on the border of Detroit. Fraternity and Skill Yourself and Horde, somebody else. Oh, Black Legion. They're part of Fraternity now, I guess. So all showed up to kill it. We hadn't really expected anything like that, so we weren't really in a position prepared to handle it. They killed the Fortizar. We announced that we'll just re-anchor a new Fortizar, because Fortizars are worth nothing now to anchor, really. The day after, or Wednesday, or whatever it is, and if Fraternity comes into XX's space again to do that and attempt to kill it again, we will consider that a violation of the NIP, and the NIP will end.
So there's no violation yet, and
Correct.
And the treaty actually ends on the 22nd?
Correct.
Okay. Well, but clearly things are tense, right? Things are building up, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, they've been building for a while. RA and moved in with XAX and announced they were going to take all of Detroit. And so, I mean, obviously, you know, Fraternity's like, oh God, they're going to invade us and take our space. But, you know, sure. But, you know, they've been framing this as some crazy invasion coming against them. And the reality is pretty clear in terms of how it's actually going to play out. So we'll see.
Do you think it will be an invasion against you?
Against XX, yeah, I assume so.
Okay.
I'm back.
I don't like the reality is I don't think there's, unless NC and PL move in a position to support the new Eastern Coalition, I don't think they have near enough to take me on in terms of Immensia, and I can redeploy sideways eastward 2 mids to cover XAX, but then it becomes a balancing act, right? But if they start,
it will be a time zone standoff where they can't accomplish anything in your time zone and you won't be able to do anything in their time zone.
Correct, but XAX's time zone is a lot closer to Fraternity's time zone than my time zones, right? So they're going to play against XAX as best they can, and that'll kind of be it. And the more annoyed they make us on that border, the more we'll try to take it out on them in their distant space from wherever they're at. So if they go hit us in Tenerifis, then I'll go start hitting shit in Wicked Creek, Scalding Pass kind of stuff, I assume.
Yeah.
Is the new Eastern Coalition name coming from them, or is that what you guys are calling them? As
Wow. They're a new coalition in the East.
Okay.
They can call themselves whatever they want.
I wasn't sure. It's the first time I'd ever heard the name. I didn't know if they were calling themselves that now or what, because I don't know what to call them. So I guess that...
It's just Fraternity and Skilly, right? Or is there any other big players involved right now?
Well, Horde.
Okay,
Horde's shown up at every one of their timers. So
Yeah.
the Horde part.
But they're just bringing like subcabs down
Which
through
includes
wormholes
Black
or
Legion as
something, right?
well, as Elo merged himself into Fraternity.
Oh yeah.
Fraternity.
I wonder how that CSM campaign's going to go now.
So,
Well, he's guaranteed himself a spot, basically.
If he gets all the China votes, he's in, like 100%. That is that, but yeah, we'll see.
there's the meta motivation for that, huh? That's pretty funny.
Well, I mean, you know, Elo's a smart cookie. He knows what he's doing, so it wouldn't surprise me. And China traditionally hasn't had a candidate in CSM, have they?
No.
So I mean, there you go. I mean, Norris will see somebody who can represent China at least a little bit on the CSM. They don't have to, do anything different.
But it seems to me this is a temporary, almost mercenary kind of hire situation. It's not necessarily going to be a permanent move.
Fraternities,
What do you mean?
China,
Oh,
like
Black
Fraternity
Legion?
is only strong in their time zone, and Origin gives them some sort of USTZ in some degree. So there's that.
Well, I mean, from the stuff that I was looking at and reading and stuff, it just seemed like, hey, we're going to do this for a while. If you want to stay in BL, you can, you other corporations. And I think a few corporations actually merged into Origin, which is a corporation, not an alliance. And that is what moved. So it's more like BL kind of on this deployment. And they've just kind of...
Yeah, they're just using the Corp as a vehicle to move people into the alliance so they can participate in FOSI-SOV, because you've got to, you can't help defend TCUs and iHubs if you're not within the alliance that owns them.
But for them to do that kind of work, I mean, they want to do the fighting, not the, well, whatever. But the point is that I just lost my point. They were moving into that for a temporary amount of time. Because I got it. This is the point. The infrastructure for the war is already there, right? You already have the tensions built up. You have infrastructure to SOV holding areas are going to war. So there's infrastructure to move around and to base in and stuff like that. So to get access to all that, you need to join that alliance. It kind of makes sense. The old model of hiring a mercenary that is outside of your group, you'd have to make a lot of adjustments, to give them permission to park and all that kind of stuff. Maybe that's easier now than it used to be anyway, but maybe it's not enough. I don't know.
Yeah, as usual, I'm not much of a fan of long-term predictions. I just want to kind of see what happens, and then we'll all see how things play out. But it's definitely great. We've got some, we've got the legacy FRT NIP ending, and we've got the GOTG making, or Darkness making, a move in the north. Matani said some interesting stuff in the fireside chat on Friday, where he's predicting that there will be some more tensions coming to EVE soon as well, which could obviously hint towards, just the southern stuff, but you never know. Because goons have been, at least main goons, haven't really been doing much apart from crabbing, of course, ever since the NIP started after they kicked us a bit around in the north.
Did you just say
summer.
goons were crabbing?
Huh?
You just said goons were crabbing?
Yeah, dude. Who knew, right?
That's a lie. We don't do anything like that.
But obviously they have a bunch of SIGs deployed to different places, so there's that. But yeah, we'll see. I'm very hopeful that we'll have some pretty exciting content happen over the next couple of months.
What about
you've got a bunch of different treaties, NIPs that are all expiring in March. So I think everyone's kind of like in a wait and see attitude. Let's see what everyone else.
Well, what's this thing about a GOTG or Dead Coalition deployment that they talked about as well? They kind of toyed with that idea.
Well, I said that earlier, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
Darkness is deployed to the border of Geminate on Sunday.
Oh, okay. So this is interesting. Are they attacking Horde from behind right before this war kicks off?
Well, I mean, again, they deployed an EU Prime on a Sunday with 180 people. I don't know how many, because it's just Darkness.
Nothing.
It's not the entire coalition.
I'm sorry.
And that is, for a move up, that is absolutely terrible. They're not going to accomplish anything with those numbers. Horde can form 180 people in pretty much any time zone, whatever they want, if they really want to. So I really don't see. See how Darkness is going to accomplish anything in Geminate with those numbers. But it might just be, it might be a fucking trap, dude. Maybe he's trying to bait us into doing something, so then he can claim, oh, we got backstabbed or whatever. It might just be a narrative move. I also want to point out they strategically called it a fun deployment, which is a very common tool to do for FCs or alliance leaders when they deploy their alliance somewhere. They kind of downplay the expectation. So if they don't accomplish anything and nothing happens, people, you can always say, well, it was just a fun deployment anyways, and we didn't really get as much content as we hoped. So whatever, let's just go back home, that kind of thing. So that makes sense.
Yeah, but to be fair, like if 100, like, just so people understand, like when you do a move up on a weekend, you're generally looking at like somewhere between 70 to 80% of your capable fighting force moving with you. And when people don't realize like the scale of what percentage of your alliance actually shows up for any given op. Like when Tess pulls 200 or 300 dudes for an op, that's like 10 or 20% of our like standing fighting force generally, like, is actually showing up to that particular op. Like for large level move ops, you're generally looking at like 60, 70, 80% of your force that is moving. So like, if I called like a full test move op, for 3 weekends from now, because you got to give people lots of time to prep for them, we could see like 3,000-4,000 dudes if it was truly that big, right? So when it's 180 dudes for a move up, that's not much. That means you're like looking at like 50 dude average fleets, like, which is like, what are you going to do with that?
Yeah, it's just kind of skirmishing around and causing problems. So it's not a very big threat, but it is interesting that Sort Dragon is moving in on Horde, their actual enemy, and with NC and PL between them. NCPL going to do anything about that at all?
Matterall, your mic is a little loud.
Is it loud or low? I keep hearing.
Yeah,
something happened to your microphone. I don't know what.
It's like your gain is way up. You're coming in real hot.
Sorry, I'm pulling gain down, and okay, how's this?
That's good.
now.
That's good.
All right, sorry about that. So what's NC's reaction, if any, that their two allies appear to be, well, one appears to be menacing the other?
Well, again, I usually just represent myself on these kind of shows. I'm forming in 5 minutes to go and kill an onlining Darkness Astra House in Myla. So that's my stance on that. But in terms of what NC stance is on it, it's probably something Wince would have to answer. But I'm just going to go and fuck with them because it's pretty close by and it's fun. And Init has sort of just not... Like, Init has just stopped doing anything very quickly. So... we have to sort of look for content anywhere else, and maybe I can get something out of Darkness. Who knows?
So in it, what happened there?
I don't know, man. Like, again, Pando and Shines made it very clear when they were on TIS a couple of weeks back that this wasn't necessarily sort of a deployment to with a certain goal. They basically killed their previous secondary stager, which was in Curse. So obviously Init Initiative, they live in Fountain, and that's their primary staging. That's where they live. That's where they have most of their stuff. But Init has always had a secondary staging system set up somewhere far away from their home, for when times are a bit boring at home. They can sort of jump clone to their secondary stager and then just do content around that area. And previously their secondary stager was in Curse and GTech O, and they have now basically scrapped that, and they have decided that they want to establish a Conan as their new secondary stager. And sort of to kick that all off, they kind of deployed to Hakonnen. They moved a whole bunch of dreads. They moved a bunch of subcap doctrines that they started cloaky camping us and all that, right? We responded to that in a very decisive manner. We basically just dropped Titans and Supers on them every time they undocked. And they've started to, be more and more careful about how they approach stuff. But if 90% of the doctrine you're flying is bombers, then you're very vulnerable to, for example, smart bombing Titans. And then we did something which actually sort of threw them off, I guess, a bit, because what we did is we formed up NCPL and Horde one evening, and we went through a bunch of wormholes, and we reinforced like 9 iHubs off the initiative at their home close to their home in Cloud Ring. And we hit a bunch of jump gates as well that they use quite frequently. And to deal with these Entosa's timers, they sort of told their people to stay in J5A and just deal with the timers. And then when they were just done dealing with those timers we initially created, we went through another wormhole with NC and PL, and we reinforced a bunch of the iHubs in Aquarius, where Initiative also holds off, which is where where some of their people make their money. So now they had to go deal with Aquarius shit.
Aquarius,
And
okay.
ever since that is over, they haven't really come back. They did one larger form up on, I think it was Saturday, where they managed to tackle a bunch of Rockwools, and then they formed up a bunch of Ravens. They called Goons as well. Goons came with like a Jackdaw fleet from Delve and another fleet from Vino, and they tried to kill a super, but that didn't work. And then we just hellcamped them into the system, and then they jumped their entire Raven fleet into our entire Titan and Super fleet and just died. So yeah, that is pretty much a summarization or whatever of what happened here in the last couple of days.
And since then, it's been kind of quiet?
Yeah, nothing has happened ever since. I mean, they do form the occasional Stuka fleet. They go around, they maybe like try to kill a Rockwell or something, but they didn't, they don't really kill that many. I think they've killed a total of 5 Rockwells so far and 1 Fax. So, yeah. We'll have to wait and see how much more effort they put into this.
Well, if any. It seems, though, like the action is starting to focus on the south. Do you think there'll be, I mean, even if Sword Dragon is moving in on Horde, that doesn't seem like it may be a big deal. Do you think anything's going to happen in the north that it's going to be like it was in 2018, where there was 2 fronts fighting, or just 2 areas that were on fire at the same time?
They're gonna watch what we do very closely, right? And like Willie said, basically, it's probably gonna be a case in the south of where, unless we deploy with a larger force to assist Fraternity and skill yourself, they're probably just not gonna accomplish much, because their time zone, their US time zone, is just much weaker than Test's US TZ is. And if
We're
we
opposite
were
time zones.
Yeah, they're pretty much opposite time. If we were to deploy, then probably Goons would make a move, but I honestly don't see us deploying anywhere to the south anytime soon. We have other plans at the moment, so.
To answer a question real quick, Killer B is an FC for Northern Coalition, which is in Tribute, and that's the north of the map. Billy, there was a message sent out that said that you guys, if I read it correctly, if it was from you, that we got attacked and we were not ready, and it sounded like you were not satisfied with the troop readiness for your guys in test. But
Yeah.
is that accurate?
Well, yeah, that's like literally what I said.
So it was you that wrote that.
And the Alliance update that everyone can read on Reddit, and that we knew would be on Reddit, obviously. It's just natural. What is it? Complacency. People like the only like we've been reliant on HiSec for content and fights for like months now, right? And it's been and then obviously people are like, well, hey, why aren't we getting more big fights? I want bigger and bigger fights. It's like killing 200 Ferox is boring, which it actually does get after a while, to be honest, after the 3rd hour of killing Feroxes, but or losing them. But it just it's just general complacency. People don't use their supers, they go back home. They don't use their battleships, they forget to buy new ones. It's just, you gotta crack the whip a couple times before people wake up and get back in proper formation. It's just standard human psychology stuff.
Yeah. How's that going? Is it are you seeing a good transition? I guess you wouldn't tell me if you weren't, but I'm just curious. Are you guys gearing up for war? It sounds like you are.
We knew that we suspected, I should say, that Black Legion was going to make a move southward to assist Fraternity, regardless of what else was happening. We weren't really expecting Skillu to join into kind of a coalition with Fraternity, so that was a little bit. But we'd roughly been expecting some stuff on the border. They were more expecting us to kind of attack them because of the Russians, but the Russians never really got their coalition formed quite as I think they would have hoped. So they can barely use the Tenerife space they have at the moment. So I'm gonna, put big doubts on the big Russian threat that's coming at them. We'll see. The whole situation is kind of weird.
Pretty aggressive groups, right? Like, well, we know that Elo Knight is aggressive. He'll take fights, and we know Fraternity is also aggressive. At least that's what I've been hearing. That they really throw all in as often as possible. But then the Russians are like that too, historically.
Historically, but that's also what's cost them large chunks of their space and large chunks of their reputation, right? Like, Eve has moved on from the I can, just, go all in every fight and get myself whelped in the face times of Eve. Now it's a much more strategic, much more careful game. The FCs that did dumb shit like that don't exist anymore. Their alliances died. The old Russian mentality of we go in, we fight, we die, we come back is gone, because even though in theory that worked, on paper it didn't. Like, in theory it worked, in reality it didn't, because people just run out of ships, they run out of morale, and they just stop showing up, and then you can't win the fights at all.
Yeah, but I wonder if they're dying of embarrassment, because it seems like there's more money in the game than ever for certain groups, I guess.
Let's say what, sorry?
It seems like there's so much money that strategy would work, unless you die of embarrassment, constantly whelping or feeding. Two terms of losing.
Money's irrelevant in the larger picture. The morale of the guys is the most key factor in this game you'll ever see. If you win 5 fights, the sixth fight you'll have, like, generally my rule is you lose 10%. Mm-hmm. If you lose a fight, you lose 10% of your numbers. If you win a fight, you'll gain about 5. And vice versa, right? Because if you're winning fights, more people want to come. They want to get on those dang frags. If you're losing fights, people don't want to come. And you can stop and you can reset that a little bit by taking a couple days and then, like, hard pushing for numbers kind of stuff. There's ways to counteract that, but if you just lose every fight, people will just stop showing up, because it's not fun getting fucking dicked every day. Like, it just isn't. And, like, it's something that people must understand if they want to be successful at the higher levels.
So you need to win.
Well, yeah. Do you play games to lose? And I mean, the funny thing is, this isn't just like Eve is a game, but it's also a game with real consequences too. So when you lose, it's not only that you're losing, which sucks, but you're losing your assets as well. And in some cases, like, a carrier for me doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. But for, like, dude number 22 in fleet, that might be his, half of his total net worth, right? And, yeah, we'll SRP it at 80 or 90% or 100%, but there's little bits that are lost. Even when you SRP things, like, they'll have their carriers loaded out with, a bling mod or 2 or all this stuff. And, they'll lose the 100 mil in fuel in the fuel bay and all that stuff. And then they'll spend 2 weeks waiting for that reimbursement sometimes, That shit matters to people. And if you don't take that in consideration, you will pay a price, and you'll pay a hard price.
Oh, wild. Well,
yeah, deep stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that separates this from the repetitive. That's why it's funny. My wife was saying, like, "Oh, you keep playing that video game," and I'm thinking, I don't feel like I'm playing a video game. Like, this doesn't really. I don't think it's the same thing. Or she's like, "Can you play Fortnite with your son? At least you'll be playing with him." So I don't actually play video games. It's more like I think about them or analyze them because of all the things that you're talking about, which are the psychological aspects of warfare and the collective efforts.
Yep.
I would also add, to Billy's point, that a really good fight, like a close fight that you might lose on the boards or something, that's not a big deal. That isn't, but like a complete whelp or something where someone made like an error and everyone just gets aced. Yeah, that sucks. And people don't like that. But if it's close, if it's a good fight, it just barely lost or something, that's not bad.
Well, it's interesting that in its momentum kind of shifted or stopped, or maybe they're planning something and we don't know about it in the north. But their losses were not that much, right? Like on paper, 15 billion, 20 billion doesn't seem like that much. But
Yeah,
it was enough.
Initiative's a rich alliance, but the thing with Initiative's campaign is they were kind of modeling it on the campaign we had done in Geminid, but like we had a very slow ramp up in where we were having lots of success, lots of fun. But eventually, you know, the northern groups, NCPL, Horde, they all got their shit together, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, enough is enough. Right around the time, maybe it was before we said we are gonna like amp up the pressure, or after, I can't remember. I wasn't really around as much at that point. But like at some point they kind of turned the switch and said, okay, enough of this bullshit. Let's lay down the hammer, and they put the hammer to us. And so when Initiative came in, I think they were still expecting that there would be a little bit of a workup time where they could, you know, get some reps in, but they came right into a hammer that had just been put on top of us. So there was no real lead in of, you know, slowly walking to the water, you know, or how do they say it? Walk into the water when your feet wet or something.
They went straight into a hot anvil sort of thing. It was like, you say you weren't there. When I was there from past experience, it was like we were slowly ramping up and moving towards the Death Clone area after the deployment, and NC Dart and PL and etc. just literally just turned on the dime. Here's supers, here's Titans, every fleet.
Well, you guys actually stopped NC from putting down a keep star where that hammer would be stored. You destroyed it out from under them.
Yeah, but that was
Tool
their
shed.
that was their own mistake as much as it was our success. Like
That was pretty much just us fucking up. Like that was I wasn't playing at the time. I was pretty much still very absorbed in World of Warcraft, and I was basically asked, "Hey, Killer, I know you're sort of not playing EVE at the moment, but can you come and help out FCing a subcap fleet at this timer?" So I was like, "Yeah, sure, but I don't want to do anything else. I just want to FC that one subcap fleet. I don't want to be involved in any of the planning or whatever." And he's like, "Okay." So I FC'd that subcap. It was such a big shit show, and we just got asked to hand it to us. And yeah, I was like, "All right, well." I was the only subcap fleet on grid. Like, it was just me and a bunch of caps, and it was like 5 enemy subcap fleets on grid. I was like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Well, if I go anywhere with these subcaps, I'm going to get converged by 5 subcap fleets and just die. It's like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to go feed. So I did that. It's fucking hilarious.
Well, yeah, because it was like, you could either try and take on the enemy subcap fleets and leave the Ravens alone, or you could try and take the Ravens on and then have every other subcap fleet land on your head. Not good odds.
Look at that.
It was a bit messy, but it's fine. Like a couple of weeks later, I hang WoW. I basically just stopped playing WoW and returned to EVE, and then, you know, we just did things differently, and then it's fine.
Can I throw out a completely off the wall, off topic suggestion that would make EVE a lot interesting in 20?
Hit us.
Remove all logistics, all remote logistics.
Please.
Remove all faxes, remove all subcap logi. Local reps only on all ships. Let's go have a war now.
Oh, it used to be, right? There's a time before logistics ships.
No, it was actually never like that. It was just the broadcasting tools weren't efficient.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, remove all logi. You want shit to blow up? Shit'll blow up.
So
ship blows up quick enough as it is, even with subcap logi.
So things have there've always been logistics ships, just they weren't used very often. Is that right, Billy?
Well, just imagine if there's no ability to broadcast, and before, like, it was like what, 4 stages of the growth of logistics. It was like, like you could lock up your guy if you had them, like whatever. Like there was nothing. Then you had it so you could set up watch lists without health bars. Then you had watch lists with health bars, and then I think we were eventually given broadcast, the ability to like broadcast for need shield, need armor, and then I think we got like the full system we got now.
Your ability to broadcast was like, "Help me out." It was voice comms. Okay.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's really funny. Okay, well that's good. Correcting. I thought the logistics ships came in like early on in one of their patches, but makes sense that it was always there. Okay, so I don't think the chat liked your suggestion there, Tuzzy. Even though you're part of Imperium leadership and an expert in logistics of moving and supplying thousands of people for civilization in space.
Yeah, this is not any kind of like, this
Yeah,
is not like
expertise. This is
goons want this or anything. This is just my own personal satisfaction. Fights would be. I miss the era of Eve, which, like strategic warfare was just having two massive T1 battleship fleets sitting on each other at 0, and like
smashing
both
it
sides
out.
lose 100 battleships each, and we have all big bloody fight. I miss those.
We've had a bit like that in the perimeter brawls recently, but they've really gotten stale as well. Like brawling 200 versus 200 Feroxes at 0 on top of each other is fun like 3 or 4 times, and then just kind of gets boring again.
Well, yeah, because
Unfortunately, as well.
there's really no there's no tactical play to it.
No,
it's like,
nothing.
It's like I tried Maelstroms and it's just less efficient than Feroxes, right? Like
Yeah, everything.
and Horde tried Abaddons to give me a counter for the Maelstroms, but they're garbage against Feroxes too, right? So it's like you literally just put 200-300 Feroxes, one side, the other side, start shooting each other, and like whichever side has like a slight numerical advantage will, in theory, win the day, right? Like maybe you can outplay 5-10%, but it's pretty rough.
What's going on with Holy Empire right now has the most amount of space in the game. Obviously
they have had for a while. It's just the nature of drones, man.
Drones, right? It's owning all this.
Whoever holds drones just holds the most systems in the game for most of the time anyways, and it's just them at the moment.
I was speaking in Discord, TIS Discord about this earlier. One of the guys in test, Basehaver, did some analysis on drones, and he worked it out. It was something stupid. It's like you put a keep star in one central location, and you put 3 others on mids, and you cover 95% of drones in supers.
And
that's it. With one
the
mid.
key region is Malpace. There's this one system in Malpace that if you put it there within super cap range, your umbrella is like 2 or 3 times bigger than Delve of how many systems you cover. It's hundreds of systems you're within jump range of. And then I think what you're talking about is maybe there's a keep you go a little bit, 4 or 5 light years in one direction, or 4 or 5 in another, and then it expands it humongously.
Yeah, you cover like literally the whole eastern border of the game effectively.
Yeah, the drone regions are pretty compact. It's pretty crazy, especially when I compare it to like some of the regions that we're in now. And like the other thing is, there's no fucking NPC stations right in the state Jedi in the drone regions, right? So that's the big thing. So there's no way for any real.
I've had this boner for a couple of weeks now, where I imagine us deploy. There's a system in Malpay, which from that one system you can cover 250 systems within Titan range.
That's the one I'm talking about. Yep.
And then seeing that there's no NPC 00 nearby, you're mostly going to be dealing with wormhole gangs to defend your to defend your crabs. And if you then use combat rock rules to defend them instead of using supers and titans, you can cover 400 systems from that one system. It's absolutely insane.
But very dense. If you look on, don't look at Dotland because Dotland is deceptive in the way it lays things out. You need within Goonswarm we have a tool called GARPA, but I think there's other tools out there that give you like a Google map, like true view of where space lies and where systems are. And Malpace is like 4 or 5 regions, like all right on top of each other, all crammed into as little space as possible.
Yeah, let me grab. I actually have that. I need to file up a VM to. Yeah, so they've had it. They've had the most amount of space for a while, although. And it looks like they have the drone regions, but they also have In's Mother and Cache, or Cache, whatever you call it, down here, which kind of adds to it. You get some.
So the thing is, Skill Yourself is surrounded on all sides by either blued or nipped entities. They've got a moderately large super cap fleet. It's large. It's not like coalition level large, but it's the largest non-coalition super fleet, I guess you would say, in the game. And there's just nobody that's, how do I put this, like, because Fraternity of the South doesn't really want more space, NC and PanFam and them don't need more space, and there's no easy invasion vectors that don't go through those entities. It just leaves them in a situation where they effectively don't really have a whole lot of trouble to deal with.
Well, but that situation can lead to internal decay, so how are they keeping themselves in shape, active, or interested?
Well, they just formed a new coalition with Fraternity and Horde to do stuff against us.
That's what I figured. Yeah.
Aren't Hard Knocks having the same problem?
Hard Knocks is falling apart. You know,
Yeah, supposedly
did they
there's.
lose Capri? Was that actually something that happened?
Lost or kicked? I don't know.
I thought there was some drama within Hard Knocks leadership where, and this is all what I've heard secondhand on like Reddit and other talk shows and stuff, but there was drama within Hard Knocks leadership where I think Hawanta was talking about this on the Meta show, where like the guy who runs Hard Knocks now is so married to the idea of their renter income and blowing up all the people around them that they have no one to fight, and he just wants to sit there and earn money while lots of people in his alliance are really butt blasted that they want to go and do stuff and they need to attack people and they want to have a war, and he doesn't want to do it. And there was like a fight within leadership where a bunch of their directors who are on the other side of the issue have all either gotten kicked or quit. So I don't know. I expect Hard Knocks' days are numbered.
Oh man, we had a relay. You know, most of you understand what a Discord relay bot is. Of their high command channel for the better part of like 2 years.
Oh my god! Really?
And like, yeah, like I don't know if it was a disgruntled distractor or whatever, but he gave us the Discord, the something or other. So like, we had a key for their high command, and it was just like you read their stuff, and it was like, geez, these boys. They were, they're not in a good spot. And I mean, you know,
there was some disgruntled Hard Knocks guys. Like after Init killed their keeps in that warm, there was some Hard Knocks guy that was like, fuck it all, I'm quitting, here's all the dirty laundry. And he had a big Reddit thread. I'd have to go back and find it. It was a couple months ago when all that went. Yeah. He basically blatantly accused the leader of Hard Knocks for all of their rental income. It's not that they're earning a bunch of ISK, which they are, but a lot of their renters are apparently, and again, don't shoot the messenger, this is what the guy said on Reddit, and, you know, take it with a grain of salt. He was saying that the guy was being paid via PayPal out of the game, RMT, to rent those regions. And that's why he's so married to like not wanting to leave, because it's personally giving him money in real life, not in-game ISK.
Yeah, so usually, like, I know a lot of the renters Tess has taken on, like, that was their initial offer to us, was, you know, just let us pay you real money, it's easy, and, like, but the thing is, there's no accountability on that, right? And it's a really quick way to, like, tear your alliance apart from the inside out. So,
well, isn't that a problem with most alliances? If you think about it, there's a lot of people doing a lot of things, and the concentration of wealth that those things make goes to a few people that control it. And well, if that
it has to be that way though, like you can't. Okay, so I know how Test operates, which is basically we just take all the money in, none of the high command gets paid anything. You know, we have access to the funds and we can use it as we see fit, but like, you know, we're not stacking a big pile of Titans to, you know, use. None of us really need it anyways. But like the thing is, because of the trust mechanisms are so poorly set up in EVE. Like, for example, like we have multiple dread caches in Test. Like, you know, we're talking 5, 6, 7, 800 capitals in some situations, and like, I can't just hand that out to you know, dude number 20, you know, or FC number 12 or whatever. Like, like the list of people you can hand that kind of level of stuff out to, like that's 1 trillion ISK. You can't just do that, right? So like, you have to have all this ISK controlled as minimally as possible, because every person you know, add to that list who can access the money is one more person who can steal all that money.
Yeah.
And I know, for example, in Test, it's happened at least twice in its history, right? So it's not a...
You have to compartmentalize. This is why one of my personal gripes with, you know, before Citadels came along, you had like Starbase. There's a corporate role called Station Manager.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, that
Starbase Config. There's 3 different roles. Hold on a second.
Starbase Defense Management, Starbase Config, and what are the other one?
Structure Manager, isn't it?
Something like that. Yeah, but the point he was about to make is that literally, if you had those 3 roles, you could turn off structures anywhere in the person's space.
Which like, means back in the day it was like all SAV and all that sort of shit would just go.
Yeah, so just to do like a simple fueling job, you basically need the ability to turn off everything the Alliance owns.
That's not good for cooperation. And,
I'm back. Sorry, my wife is on a conference call and my son like broke into her office and was yelling while she's trying to talk. Yeah, so like I think Billy was saying, they've all shoved everything into the one corporate role, station manager, and that role is a destructive role. It can do things like delete the rigs in a keep star, for instance. So you have to be careful who you give that out to, and there's a lot of like mundane, tedious tasks that need to be done with regard to citadels that require that role. Well, you need to simultaneously hand it out to a bunch of people so that you have enough people to handle that mundane work, but at the same time, you can hand it out to a bunch of people because it's a very risky role to hand out. And
Yeah,
like, I
you
really
can't.
wish CCP would break the various things you need to do with citadels up into those other roles that aren't really being used anymore now that passes are kind of.
Even if they could just make it regional, like it would be so much better. Like there's just so many.
Or tierable, so you can go. They could do all that in Astra houses and Fortizars, but they can't touch Keepstars, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's. I wish there would be like a. They did a really good job with the structure browser and the access list system. If there would be some way for you to go through with like some check boxes to or even maybe define your own corporate roles.
Oh, could you
Like
imagine
have a
if
bunch
they
of
gave
check
us like
boxes and you
more
could
than 7 corporate wallets and the ability to like set different access levels for each wallet?
Yeah, that would be ideal. But I think that's all mated to the old code that's probably, kind of like POS code. They don't want to really touch it, and they'd much rather just write a new system than trying to go in there and dick with the old.
Yeah, the point is that I think Billy put his finger on it. The way that permissions are set up, you have to concentrate wealth for a large group of people in very few hands, because the controls of the game allow people just to steal all the time. So the controls have to improve, and until they improve, there's no choice but to concentrate the wealth into 3 or 4 trusted hands. That sort of thing.
Or 8 or 10 in test situation, which is actually incredibly lucky that we have that many people to trust.
Right.
But now more than ever, if anybody gets their hands on, like for a lot of large alliances, you're talking a trillion ISK or more in active ISK reserve kind of thing. And if somebody has a trillion ISK, they can literally like. It used to be a problem that if you had that much ISK, you would not be able to, just you lose all your reputation. But nowadays you can just not biomass, wherever you skill down your character, strip the skill points, start a new guy, inject yourself back up to a pretty reasonable point, and have like 800 billion ISK to do whatever you want with. Right? It's not the same as it used to be in terms of the mobility of players.
That's a very good point. Yeah. It's
also the meta of the game also makes it far more dangerous as well, because if you give out access to these caches and suddenly all the fax caches disappear, all your supers and titans are now either trapped or useless because you can't use them, because you don't have the fax cache set up to be able to go, let's use our supers and titans when we need to.
Well, I don't
know about everyone else, but at least in our case, the caches are backups. Our members have their own faxes, in many cases, multiple faxes. It's only when we start to burn through those.
Yeah, but that's a terrible
idea. Yeah, but if you're going into a super cap or a titan brawl, you're burning through faxes. Like that's
true.
A given.
Like I'm thinking of the fights when we did those 2 big fights up north. We had caches for all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
So think of those fights now, but you cannot use those caches.
We were kind of like mind gaming war with Imperium, like 12 months ago or something, and like at that point we knew you guys had like no fax caches, and we were like, yeah, we just kill their faxes. They'll run out pretty short order. Like, and like at that point, I think we still had like over 200 in our fax cache. I'm like, yeah, they'll have this massive numerical advantage, but they'll run out of faxes in pretty short order because very few people have more than one fax, right? Like you just don't, like you don't think, I'm just gonna buy a second fax because I use the first one so much, right? It's like it's just not something you do, right? So if you don't have that, giant cache of faxes, then you can be made to pay a pretty heavy price, even if you have significant advantages on the field. And the funny thing is, when it came to both UALX and X47, neither sides really shot the other team's faxes because they knew they had caches. So it becomes sort of a weird self-fulfilling prophecy where you don't bother shooting your enemy's fax because you know they have the replacements.
Or it's a game of chicken whose cache is going to run out first.
Well, nobody plays that game.
Yeah. When, right. It's such a small chance of.
Yeah. two deep pockets, nobody's bothering. So you guys just decided to focus on alpha and try to.
Well, that's why everybody focused on Titans, because it's like, well, I can try to shoot through 300 facts while they kill my Titans, or I can try to shoot through Titans while they shoot through my Titans, or vice versa.
It's a surefire thing that every Titan you kill is a little bit less of their DPS you're taking away, and if you can get their volley threshold below what you can tank, then they can't kill any.
But also in relevance, like, if you're trying to kill faxes, and let's say you kill 200 faxes and the servers go down and they kill 10 Titans, who won that fight? Right? Server stability is not something FCs forget about either, right? So
I'm really interested to see when this 64-bit client is actually like in production and we're all using it. The first time one of these massive fight happens, to see the to compare the performance of the fight compared to the old ones, which were all limited to 4 gigs of RAM per client. You had people dropping constantly. I want to see if it hopefully makes a big difference in terms of like client stability.
Certainly possible it will.
One thing that surprised me about that, we tested that 1 week ago, was the test at this time, and we were online. Ron here was helping, and we were visualizing. Of course, there's no Mac client, so I couldn't do it myself, but I had some guys with Windows clients, 64-bit, showing me what they could do. And it was a big fight, and there was tie-dye. It wasn't gigantic, it wasn't thousands of people, but it was hundreds of people. And you could literally sweep the camera in and around all the wreckage and ships shooting. And it didn't occur to me that, because I thought, okay, well, look, as a player, it'll look pretty cool, and I can see things, and I can use max settings and all that because my client can handle more. But it never occurred to me that broadcasting fights is going to completely change now that the camera can actually get in there and show what's going on.
So you mean you'll be able to do it without crashing?
Yeah, without. Yeah. We used to, like, whenever we did 9
I know. Yeah. Don't move the camera. Don't move the camera.
Don't touch it.
Whoever your broadcaster is needs to be running like a massive one of these machines, like AMD Threadripper with 32 core with like 64 gigs of RAM or something massive. So
well,
they can run everything and not max out their RAM.
I was running my machine's
Patreons.
Sorry. My machine's an i9 7900X with 32 gigs of RAM, and each client, I had 2 clients going with max graphics in the middle of the Titan fight, and both were right around 10 gigs of memory each.
And that was actually more than they wanted. I think they're trying to bring that down. At least that's what...
Yeah, modern operating systems will basically eat up all RAM you throw at them if you give it, unless properly coded. I know I'm not really super familiar with how Windows works compared to Mac OS. I'm an Apple dev, but the way I'm assuming what Microsoft does with Windows is very similar to what Apple does with their operating system. They have a system within their OS called Grand Central Dispatch. It's kind of like what Intel does with hyper-threaded stuff, in that when you get to like a 64-bit app, when you look at the system preferences to see like, oh, well, this app's using this much RAM and that much RAM and all, when it says it's using like 20 gigs or something, it's not really using 20 gigs. That's how much is just there as addressable memory, and there it'll say like it'll have 2 different RAM stats. I think the littler of the 2 is the true one, and the other one is just like what's available to it to use if it needs it versus what it's actually using. But if you're not careful, if you don't write your app in the correct way, it'll just take everything the system has. If you've got 64 gigs of RAM, it'll use 64 gigs of RAM. It'll just consume everything. And then you'll start to cause major issues with not only that particular app, but all the other apps on the system.
Yeah, so
yeah.
We'll see what that's like. I think it's going to be interesting. And then you guys how do you guys, Villy especially, and Killer Bee's left, but you guys that command giant fights, what do you guys think of this new server technology they're going to test? Did Villy take off?
He did.
Bummer. Right. All right, well, let's...
run here in a second.
There we are.
Gotta go.
Yeah.
Do some errands and stuff, so good talking.
Yeah. Thanks, Tuzzy, for coming by. All right, so Killer Bee, Villy, and Tuzzy are taking off or gone. Killer Bee might return. And those are the guys that could speak to like what the the effects of having server technology that reduces tie-dye and disconnects would, how much that would help. And again, it's all theory because we don't know how this is going to perform under the weight that Eve can apply to a server. So it's always been known as a technological game. Actually, it's funny because everybody that talks about Eve and then tells me about it, like they ask people, "Hey, you're a gamer? Have you heard of Eve Online? That's what my relative plays." They all hear the same thing. They're like, "Yeah, that's a dad's game." And I think it's because, first of all, the whole genre is interesting even to adults. But also, it's a very technical game, and it's always proud of its technical achievements, whether it was one shard or having clients on Mac and Linux as well. It always has that cachet of being like a real technologist's game, which fits its sci-fi futuristic landscape. And also, just what they've built with corporations going to war, and the metasphere where players actually organize outside the game in very specific ways. The amount of security, like actual web security required in order to protect your secrets, your corporate secrets. It's an amazing technological game, and therefore it attracts a lot of people who are interested in that sort of thing. But one of the things about that game, because it's one shard, one world, is that it requires a massive server. And right now, the superstructure that they built for the game to be able to handle thousands of people fighting, we manage as players to tax that into oblivion. When we were in 9TAC4, I believe the server node or whatever was running at like 100% peaked for hours and hours and hours. And they literally catch fire and stuff. So it would be interesting to see a new technology that could kind of use resources as it needs and be able to expand for 10 times the size that it can expand to now, or more. Who knows? It really depends. So they're going to test this technology, and it's one of competing technologies. There's multiple technologies, but there's one group that CCP decided to work with to try to test it, to try to throw Eve players at it, to break it, to really tax it, and to see how much it can really handle. So look for that. It's going to happen in a couple weeks. There's details all around. It's Hadeon is the corporation, and the actual event is called the Ether Wars, AETHER, I believe. Okay, enough of that. I want to talk about release notes before we have to go. We'll go in about 15 minutes. Two things that are really big here. One is, of course, you can now buy your skills. You can see that down here. The added ability to purchase all core skills directly from the character sheet for a markup of 30% of seated prices. There's a couple things going on here. One is you can now buy these skills wherever you are. If you're in wormhole space, if you're in deep space, wherever you are, you don't need to go to the market to get the skill book to inject it anymore. That's a big plus for people who had to run those errands, and sometimes that would keep people out of fleets that were in nullsec because they didn't have the right skill to get into the right fit to participate in the DPS part of that fleet. And so that was kind of a bummer. So they would sometimes fly things they didn't want to, and with FCs yelling at you for bringing the wrong ship, it's a big deal. It's embarrassing. So nobody does it, and that kicks you out of the game. So it was kind of a bummer. Another thing is that when you're in wormhole space, it's one more errand that you have to run or remember to put on a list for somebody else to pick up for you, or that sort of stuff. So it's an inconvenience. So for the convenience of being able to just say, I want that skill now, I got it, and I'm going to put some skill points to it, the 30% markup is there to tax that a little bit more. And that keeps people who want to bring books and drop them off in certain places to give to their people. It still gives them a 30% window to make a little bit of profit if they want to. Not much. So that's one. The other thing that does that's important here is the skill book prices are going to change this week. And we just found that out from Tuzzy, that skill book prices are going to change. And this is a good opportunity, it would appear, to speculate, right? Because if you have a skill book that's worth 100 million and you buy it now and it goes up to 200 million and you sell it, then you've made 100 million, just like that. But it's very risky because they haven't said prices are going up. They've said prices are going to change and balance. And so you don't know if you buy a skill book that's actually worth 100 million less than it's worth now. So I was tempted to buy, for instance, as an example, tempted to buy Titan skill books, thinking that there's so many Titans now, one way to slow them down would be to make their skill books cost 7 billion instead of 5 billion or 5.5. And that is a terrible risk. If I were to buy those and they were actually to drop in price or stay the same, then nothing happens. I just bought skill books that I have to sell, and it's just money tied up that is tied up until I can sell those, which is not that often. On the other hand, if you look at like dreadnoughts that are, I think, 90 to 100 million, those are totally different than the carrier, which is 500 million. So there might be some kind of a change in there. Maybe the skill books for dreadnoughts will go up to 250, something a little more comparable to its carrier counterpart. Don't know. It's really going to be interesting. I don't think I'm going to speculate at all. It's just too risky, and also you're tying yourself into skill books which are going to lose the velocity of being bought and sold because people can just say, I'm not going to travel to the market to buy it, so I'm just going to buy it here. But anyway, the 30% markup really affects you when you're buying hundreds of millions in skill books. So maybe in those upper levels, it might be worth buying skill books if you think they're going to go up in price. So that's the second thing. One, 30% markup. You can buy it off your skill sheet. That's in game right now. And two, prices on books are going to shift this week. They're looking at it now. They're going to shift this week. The third one is core skills, it says right there. So what are core skills? I don't know if we know exactly what core skills are, but it looks like everything except the stuff that drops as loot. So faction stuff. Have we had any clarification on that? Oh, I'm looking at the guys in here, but maybe they've stepped away.
No, nothing more than the fact that they've basically said anything that drops won't be considered core.
Yeah.
So the Triglavian stuff, drugs, 6x blow, some neurotoxin recovery skills. I'd assume things like Amar encryption skills won't be counted in that as well because they all drop from Explo loop, etc., etc., etc. But for a definite defined list, no, there's been nothing about that yet.
Okay, it's really funny that Night Blast makes a good point. I talked openly about speculating when the what were they called? The absolute injectors were introduced at Christmas time, which I thought was a really big opportunity to pump your characters up with SP, like stem cells. They're unallotted SP, so you could just use them in a pool as you needed them. But to build up that pool, that was a good opportunity for veterans to do that. And I was right about that. What I was wrong about was that the opportunity to do that was going to be the choke point. That people would pay a lot of money for the opportunity to do that. They would buy the boosters, in other words, for a lot of money. And boy, was I wrong about that. I spent probably, I think I calculated 25 billion in just wasted money because I bought these things that just died in value. But I do want to say, so do not listen to me for speculating. I just throw out ideas and things that I'm thinking of doing. It doesn't mean you should do it. But I want to say that I then panicked and said, okay, well, instead of doing what my plan was, I'm going to expand my plan and I'm going to buy a character and buy injectors. And I actually ended up making up most of my money. And I went from augmenting one character by 30 million skill points, 33 million skill points that are now in a pot that I can use for whatever. I didn't do that with one character. I ended up doing it with 4 characters. So I took a loss. I overbought.
A lot of risk.
It was. I took a loss by buying too many injectors, and then I decided just to use them all and ended up making it back that way. Now, was that a good investment? I'm not sure. It was a different investment than I wanted to make. But now if I sell the character, I don't want to, but if I do, one of the nice sale points is going to be this guy has 30 million free SP on it. that you can allot anywhere you want. So you can take this character that's already skilled in a certain way, and you have an incredible amount of flexibility in addition to that. And so that might be worth it. And so I could end up making more money in the end when I sell characters. But the point is, yeah, speculation. It's a risky thing. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And the other thing you never think about when you're speculating, how long can I afford to have money tied up? So if you're taking 50% of your wealth and investing it in one thing, you're going to be stuck there for a while. So can you last on that other 50% until you're able to sell off that stuff? And even if you sell it off, you're selling it off a little at a time. You're usually not just dumping it, because you'll kill whatever market you just dump into. So yeah, so speculating, I'm not an expert at it, and there are guys that are very good at it, or at least claim they're very good. Nobody ever opens up their finances to show us like how good they are. But yeah. Money, yeah, I call ISK money because it's just easier for me to say conceptually, but also people who don't, who are interested in EVE and who might be watching this stream, I also talk in layman terms a lot so that they can kind of, I use jargon as little as I can. You might have noticed that. So I'll call ISK money so people understand the concept. It's the same concept. We're never trading real money on here. We do accept sponsorship for real money. I'll put that there. But when I'm talking about money in the game, I'm talking about money in the game.
In-game ISK.
Yeah, and that's ISK. But if I were to say ISK, nobody knows. I mean, people don't know what that is. I mean, they can probably catch on, but I still think it's a courtesy. We want to bring people into the game. There's so many people interested in EVE Online. They just want to hear about it. They don't want to play it. It's too complicated. They don't have enough time. Or whatever other reason they can't play the game. But they still want to listen to it. They want to hear about it. And there's a lot of former players that will definitely like want to keep up with what's going on, even though they're away from the game things. So, all right, so that was interesting. So skills are changing. You can buy them directly, 30% markup if you do. Core skills only. That's probably books that don't drop. For the books that do drop, you're going to have to earn those. Did before, and you have to buy those on the market from people who earned them and want to sell them. Okay, and the other thing that's changing, it looks like missions and NPCs, level 4 and 5 agent missions, which are basically missions, are not accessible unless you're paying for the game by a subscription in one form or another. So whereas alphas were able to run those, they can no longer run those.
Where's Dirk McGurk to argue and fight for the rights of the alpha clone pilots?
Now they put audio up at the top. Usually they put the more important feature up at the top, but I think they're going in alphabetical order now. It's kind of like they're doing. So it's so it may not be the most important feature, but I always love audio. I always listen to audio when I play this game. And it looks like you'll hear different music for different factions, which will be kind of interesting. It gives them a little more characterization. And I wonder if that subtlety won't really grow on people, or will grow on people as they play the game a bit more and go out and interact with pirates and stuff like that. And the other thing that you heard earlier today was CSM member Killer B talking about the changes to anomalies. And this is a change to their respawn rate. So it looks like they have not created a fixed reduction, but some kind of a range. And so you will probably be able to generate less money in the game with anomalies. It's going to be spawning slower. It'll be variable.
It forces people to spread out, very similar to how miners were forced to spread out when the mining anomaly changes went through with the 5-hour respawns on Colossals rather than the instant.
Yeah.
So it'll be good for the game in the long run. It's going to be short-term pain for a lot of people because they're going to have to spread out, but it'll be good for the game in the long run.
Cool. And the last thing, as far as features that have come today, there is now a countdown timer for repairing your stuff. So it used to be that when you used paste, what's that stuff called? Nano
paste?
Yeah, thank you. Nano paste, right? You use your nano paste, and you know what? It took me a long time to figure out how to use it. I was like, do I push it? Do I drag and drop? How do you do this? It took me a long time to figure it out, and I didn't want to ask because one of those things you're supposed to already know. But if you use nanopaste on a module, it would blink, and not be available to you until it was done repairing. But you really didn't know how long it was going to take. So, and it wasn't like it's only going to take 5 seconds, 10, 15 seconds. It took a minute, who knows? Depended on your skill level, I think. Or how damaged it was, probably, is how much. And so now you can actually tell with a timer. And the timers in Eve there's a module which is a circular icon, and the timer is on the outside of that module, so you'll see some kind of an outline, some color will be twisting back to the center point to be gone, and that's your timer. So you can check it out there. And I don't know, could you cancel repairs? I don't remember if you could cancel repairs. I don't think you could. You can repair. Oh, I see. You can repair that. You can cancel them now.
You could before. It was a case of repair. So this I don't know what the changes are currently, but the old system what it would do is you'd right click the module, click repair. It would then become unusable while it was repairing, and it would slowly repair, and you'd see the heat damage slowly come back. But you could also then right click it and cancel repair, and it would leave the module as it is at that point. But then it would become usable again.
I should have had you explain that, because you explained that a lot better than I did. And do you think that can still happen? It says the tooltip, let's just read that. The tooltip of a repairing module in the ship HUD will now have a countdown showing you how long until the module is fully repaired. So this
is... Right, so it's the same system, but what they're basically doing is, because before it was very much guesswork. You never knew how long it was going to take, because all you'd see is the red heat damage, come back around the module until it was repaired. But you didn't know how long it was going to take. You could roughly guess it, depending on how much nanite paste it was using and how damaged your module was. But it was like, oh, it's going to take roughly 30 seconds, it's going to take roughly 45 seconds. Now they're giving you a definite, it's going to take 42 seconds, it's going to take 16 seconds sort of thing. So it's better to make decisions of.
Thanks for clearing that up. Okay, so there's some other things in here. I always look at defect fixes because there's some neat little surprises in there. And I haven't actually given this a lot of a read over, but to prevent exploits surrounding wars catches my attention because they're making changes to war deck mechanics, and this may be one of the changes that they wanted to implement this month. And I believe it's I can't explain it because I don't know it well enough, but there were some tricks that you could play on people, warring parties that just seem to not be in the spirit of what wars were supposed to be. So they're fixing a lot of those kinds of, I don't know, mechanics trickery. We won't call them exploits. Well, they do call them exploits, actually. They said to prevent exploits surrounding wars, so...
Yeah, it was exploiting interactions between different mechanics. That was the problem, because the mechanics on their own worked as intended, but the mechanics when combined with other mechanics, you could do some funky things with them that would then make unintended behavior. We'll leave it like...
Yeah. But that's, in the detect fixes, that is a significant fix. There might be other ones in here, but they all seem very pedestrian, just fixing this and that. Assume that's it. So that's your patch notes for March. And we'll go over them again because they put patch notes out pretty much every month. All right.
Ooh, that's actually just... I just saw an interesting one there. If you scroll down, it's in about halfway down, partially using charge groups. Now, I wonder if this will prevent the... You remember how you used to split LO stacks to prevent Sinos relighting? In theory, that fix will actually stop that from being able to be used.
I don't remember that because I didn't do that. I usually just left it out of the cargo. But how would that trick work, and how would this fix it?
So the usual method was in the game, the modules would look for a single stack of an item to reload from. So for a Sino relight, it would look for X amount of liquid ozone. The wording of that to me says that this would now look for all stacks. So if you have multiple stacks of liquid ozone, say 50 each, to make your 300 that you need to light a single light of ozone of a cyno. In theory, in the old system, it would look at what the first stack, see it was 50, and go, not enough, light cancels. That to me would state that it would see 50 plus plus all the rest, and go, oh, there's 300. Next light, please.
So that's actually so that strategy is gone, right? Of splitting your stacks.
Possibly.
Edge case for cyno lighters.
Yeah, but it's also for like ammo and that sort of stuff. So it's like if you've got multiple stacks of ammo because you've loaded, unloaded, and reloaded guns, throughout a long battle. So you've gone from antimatter to thorium to iridium back to antimatter. So you've got stacks all over your cargo hold, but only small amounts. The next time you reload your guns back to say antimatter, it will take all the stacks that are in your cargo hold to fill up the guns fully, rather than, oh, you've only got 20 in this stack, so I'll stick 20 ammo in only.
Well, that's good. Yeah. It prevents you from having to do the, I always do this to tidy up. You right click in cargo and you can stack all, and that just puts everything of a type on top of each other and creates one stack. And I just do that as a habit, as just maintenance going through an area, put everything together in its proper order. And I do that, in cargo all the time too. If I'm constantly reloading and creating multiple stacks, I just do that and put them all. But I guess you won't have to do that anymore.
The other case that would hit is people lighting emergency cynos, and probably once or twice a week, someone cannot light their cyno, even though they have the ozone, but it might be just in goofy stacks, so they won't be able to light, and then they die, and then you look on their kill mail and you see the ozone, but you ask them why, and then they just feel really, really bad.
Well, what I'm thinking is it takes away some playability from guys in nullsec who are kind of helping. And this is what Seraph was talking about just a minute. That if you have, like, say an industrial ship that can have a lot of cargo space, you could make different stacks of. Well, never mind. I don't even want to talk about the edge case because it's not really worth it. I want to go on to the last thing we have is Crossing Zebras is not closing, they're hibernating, I think. And they have basically put out one last article saying everybody's gone. All the experienced writers have left, and we've only got a couple podcasts coming through, so we don't want to say we're closing and ending Crossing Zebras, so we're just going to go into a hibernation of sorts. Writers come back, then start again, that sort of stuff. Now, a little bit about Crossing Zebras, as we call them in America, and Zebras as you call them in the UK. It was a Scottish group, the Zebra Crossing Corporation, that was a part of Engard, I believe, which was there's an unflattering term, pets, for AAA. AAA was incredibly powerful around 2010, 2012. So a couple guys from that corporation, one was technical, his name was Jeg, J-E-G. And another guy had a podcast that was just kind of a geek podcaster for stuff that geeks were interested in. His name was Xander, and they were in this corporation together. I think they're both Scottish, and so they put their talents together and created a website and podcast. And I think they invited other people to come and contribute writing and possibly be on the podcast. High quality podcast. It only lasted an hour, but it was very consistent every week. And so at least once a week, I knew I was going to have a really good amount of Eve talk that was concentrated and of high quality. Something about podcasts and Eve Online, a lot of times, wow, I could really go deep into this. I don't have much time, but think about it. Podcasts came out of, blogs, basically. Eve had a lot of bloggers because it attracted people who had a little more thinking, or the desire to put their thoughts on paper through technological mediums, and put them out there and let people read them. And blogging was really hot, you know, in the 2000s, because everybody was becoming their own independent voice, and that was very attractive. Twitter came and ate that blogger sandwich, right? Because if you had a page that you wanted to make your points on, you would do your points and all that stuff. And people's patience just, they didn't have that. So when Twitter came around, it was like microblogging. It was little bits of your thoughts and your information and the things that you found interesting just linked into this Twitter feed. And that's how Twitter, that's the appetite that Twitter was feeding, was this, I'm going to express myself and show you what I'm interested in and put it out there in really quick little succession. And you could basically get different tweeters or people tweeting and put them into one place. So blogging started to die down as people started to read less and less blogs. But for a while, it was really popular. And at this time, when EVE Online was growing up, bloggers were a big part of talking about EVE Online. But a lot of the times, because you couldn't know stuff behind the curtains, right? Corporations didn't let you know stuff to talk out loud about. Only the leaders of corporations, this is even before alliances, would be the ones talking. And they would do their talking in EVE Online forums. And that's where they would challenge each other and try to wordsmith each other, because they were winning and fighting in the game, and they were winning and fighting in forums as well. That was always been a big part of it. Propaganda wing, or the public PR efforts, and psychological warfare, frankly, going through the forums. Now, at a certain point in EVE's history, it got really messy, because people, you know, a slap fight will always turn into a real fight when somebody gets hit too hard. People get upset. So they basically at CCP had to say, look, we got to keep this within certain constraints, so chill out, guys. And the people didn't like that. They felt like they were being censored. So they took that conversation of one alliance telling another, with a third going in there, and that whole conversation was exported because the players didn't want to be censored. So they went to other places like Scrap Heap Challenge, or what's that one called? The Kugutsumen. And that's where that kind of became the go-to place to read about what was going on in EVE Online. At the same time, the bloggers had mutated into, they were still going, but they had news services that were coming up, like EVE Tribune was a place where people would write stories about EVE Online, and a lot of times it was very thoughtful pieces, and it was only one every 2 or 3 days. It wasn't a large amount. So these two things started to merge. You have multiple things going on at the same time, but you have the players talking to each other in forums, and you have news services that write careful articles about things that they know, which weren't what's going on inside of different corporations or any of that stuff. It was very much, this is the war, this is what happened, and it was in very readable terms. And so these two things merge because you have EVE News 24, which says, we can take all the secrets that are being talked about in Kugutsumen and rumors that we hear about, and we'll put them out in short bursts on this EVE News 24. So it was a 24-hour cycle. So the news cycle was here, and this is when you started to get daily news bits coming out of EVE News 24. That was around 2010, 2011. And then you had competitors see that work and start to, you had the Matani.com come out and start to do the same thing, only with more writers rather than 3 or 4 writers. And they had more writers and they had more resources to do it. And they came from their point of view, and it was said they were going to defend them. Matani, who came out, it was called the Matani.com, said he did it to defend himself because he had just been badly criticized by EVE News 24, which now had a political agenda against Goonswarm, and Massively, which was not an EVE publication, but it was about MMORPGs, and EVE has always been on Massively. And so those two groups had criticized the Matani and really kind of drummed up support for him getting pushed out of CSM and not being able to run for CSM because he had said some regrettable things that he apologized for. So that was what was going on there. So the news cycle had become faster, It had started to involve rumors. It had started to involve stuff that was behind the curtains that you couldn't know. And people ate it up, and there was a whole comment section that people would, fight in. And so you had a lot of different things going on. Meanwhile, the bloggers are still sitting over here in thoughtful, long-form pieces. And a lot of those writers started writing in these new news services because there was more exposure, more people watching and listening. And so that became a thing. The bloggers started to dwindle. And then CZ comes around, and CZ's in 2012. And you have this podcast come up about Eve, and then you see a lot of the bloggers who don't want to be part of this really quick cycle. Because as a writer, if you're in that cycle and you publish something that took a lot of work, it's going to get buried by 3 or 4 other articles within 2 or 3 days. And so it doesn't last that long. It doesn't really have the viewership that you want. So if you go to a slower place like your own blog, that's great. You have all the time you need to let that article that you wrote took a long time get the audience that it needs. But nobody's coming to your blog anymore because people are on Twitter, they're on forums, or they're somewhere else. So CZ kind of was a polished version of, we'll give you, blogger, a home to publish your stuff on. And so they were the magazine version of EVE Online News. And so they had more thoughtful pieces, and they were carefully edited, and there was nice artwork put on them, and they were given more care and a slower pace, and that was their niche. And so eventually Xander, whose great podcast, finally got him into the CSM, and so that was at the peak of their popularity, probably 2013 or 14, which is really when a lot of things were going on in EVE Online. There was 60,000 people logging in at its peak at this time. Big battles had happened, a lot of publicity. Test was getting big. Brave, I think, was just barely being born, but it was growing. There was a lot of big things happening. The capital changes were not here yet, so a lot of people hadn't left that owned capital. And that was the time that Crossing Zebras was coming up. Then the podcast stopped. Xander, who was on CSM, was not reelected, which I think hurt his feelings, so probably lost a lot of interest there. And eventually, CZ became more of a publication area as Nyden took over as editor, and he managed to edit some great articles for people for a long time, a couple of years. So there was another couple of years of time where CZ was doing well. Unfortunately, Nyden, I think, got busy with real life and had to step back. And I think it went into the hands of Cosmo at that point, and eventually Laura, who I think it ended up with. But in that time, the big move that hurt Crossing Zebras was that their financing was cut out from under them, so they could pay ISK for writers because they were getting monetary gifts from Casino called I Want ISK. Gave about billions and billions, tens of billions to them, and they would use that money to pay writers. Now, I know they had reserves. They are all personally rich or whatever in the game that were there. But that money helps, writers who are interested in writing, but, they need to play the game to earn their ISK as well. So there's that. Anyway, whatever it was, whether it was writers having said everything they wanted to say, or that the audience was just not there anymore because they'd move on to Reddit, or maybe the entire medium of reading websites is just no longer as popular as it was with the rise of streaming. Who knows what it was? The CZ basically slowed to a crawl, and essentially we're only publishing podcasts that could be found somewhere else anyway. So with their podcast gone, with their main content creators gone, and with their editing, with their editor removed, basically, it's Crossing Zebras, it was a matter of time before they slowed to a halt. And that's what's happened. And they put out a note saying, yep, officially we're just in hibernation. If you guys want to come back, we'll be here, but we can't fix this ourselves, so they need help. Now, the reason I gave you all that is because clearly we're in the EVE media business too, so it's interesting to me what the life cycles are It just seems like everything's is much more immediate, right? Like we're in this together. You guys are telling me things in chat, and I'm trying to tell you things, and we have people here who join us as guests, and they try to tell you things too, and we're communicating in real time. And even people, I'll just tell you this: when Vili was here, I immediately got texted from Naros, who's the leader of Fraternity, and he's listening to Vili and our show live while he's driving. That's why he couldn't come on. But that's how immediate this game has become. And then we have hundreds of people watching, right? So it's almost like everything is happening real time, which is very interesting. So that's a lot different than I'm going to blog and then you'll read it, and within a week I'll hear back if people are even reacting. We're reacting to each other immediately. So everything's sped way up. And I think that's just a completely different model than CZ was good at. And also Eve News 24 is having a hell of a time producing content. Most of it's borrowed from other sources. INN plots out their stuff, but I don't know what their readership's like. Actually, I do know, and I don't think it's as high as it was. Now, it always goes in parallel with the game. And it is steady, but it's just not nearly as high as it was 3 years ago. Not just for them, but for everybody who writes publications. So the point is, I don't know if it's CZ's problem with their brand or whatever, but it's definitely an evolution, and I think it's just become a different, faster world. People want their news, and that's why we've evolved to keep this show going live, and why we're doing what we're doing the way we're doing it is to try to evolve to keep up with the way that people are accessing information. Yeah, it's an incredibly fast cycle. So I hope you guys all appreciate that. It definitely takes time. I'm late for work, for instance. All my free time goes into checking out what's going on with people and checking in with people and making sure that they have what they need to do what they need to do. And also, the whole effort is helped by guys who are interested in doing this sort of thing. So everybody that's a part of TIS, everybody that's affiliated with it, the people who take the time to write in channels on Discord, which is also a very immediate platform. Thank you all, because you're all what Talking in Stations is, including the people in chat today. That said, we have upgraded equipment, right? I have this light. I have a green screen now. I think I showed this last time. We have this little clicker that allows a little more fluidity in the program. We have bought this mouse because when the 64-bit client comes, we want to be able to practice and sweep in and out. So when we go live to a battle, we can take you inside that battle as much as we can with the camera. We're making preparations to do all this stuff to make it a lot more engaging, so that everything that we do to talk about EVE Online feels like you're getting as close to what's going on as possible. And there's a couple of things I want to say. One is, besides the thank you to everybody that's involved and to the audience that shows up and keeps us motivated by telling us stuff like this, that you guys love our stream, that all works. I don't know anybody that likes doing something that they're not good at or that they don't get any kudos for. It's as simple as a pat on the back, or hey, I just want to let you know I appreciate what you do. That goes for everybody in the world in any management position. They know that their people get motivated by recognition. It's just a fact. In fact, it's more powerful than money in a lot of cases. Like, feeling purpose is more powerful than money. Money is flexibility, and it's very necessary in the real world, and it's flexibility to do things in the real world and gives you more choices in the real world. But purpose is almost spiritual, right? That's important, not just for me, because I hear it and I love hearing it from you guys, but for all the people who are involved, like McLeod, who does our show on Sunday, Artemis, who does the show on Thursday, and all the people who kind of help out here and there. And not just the part of TIS, but in other, people who are bringing you news everywhere else. They hear that kind of feedback too. So I encourage you guys to do that. That's the food that the media runs on. The other thing is, with the improvements that we make, they all cost money. And one of the things I'm not willing to or allowed to, if aggro, go into is debt doing this kind of show, because it's taking up so much of my time that's kind of my investment. And at least, you know, don't let it cost things. So we have a Patreon for you guys to support Talking in Station efforts. And so I want to plug that. And we also have channel subscriptions, which I've seen a lot of you guys do. And I appreciate those as well. Even if it's $2 or $3 from you guys, you'll feel better for like being a part of keeping it going. I know that because I sponsor things too in real life. But also it actually adds up. And it ends up working, and it allows us to buy stuff, not just for me, but hopefully for the guys that actually do the work. TIS. So Patreon, you can find it on our website or our stream on Twitch. You know, try to sponsor us if you can. This is all free for you guys, and it would always be free, but we do like to keep the costs off our back, and you guys help with that. The last thing is, in order to bring you the news even faster than this, is I'm going to start writing again. Before I did any of this, I was a writer. And I've been wanting to write again. It just takes a long time to write. It's certainly a long time to research things. So I thought, well, what we should do is have a newsletter. And so you can get on that. We're going to do it. And you can get on that list. You want it to come directly to your actual email. Go to talkinginstations.com and scroll to the bottom, and it'll pop out. You can just sign in, and you'll be on our list. We only have a few people on there right now because we haven't really talked about this, but now you can do that. And I also want to extend that writing to in-game. I'm not ready to announce yet what the name of the effort will be. When I am, there will be a list inside of, what do you call it, a mail list inside of the game that you can subscribe to. So if you don't want anybody having your real world email, I understand that. Or if you want to log into your client and read the news there, that'll be available to you as well. It'll be once a day or once every 2 days, or maybe even 3. It just depends on when I can get to it. And it'll just be a few paragraphs on whatever the player news is of that day. We want to try to do that. Try to stay consistent without burning out. So yeah, so subscribe to that newsletter. Well, one of the things I really hope happens, and I'm trying hard, it's hard, it's really hard, is to stay inside the context of the game. So when you open up your client and there's a new mail from our mail list, Talking in Stations, whatever it is, I think I call it Newsline right now, but it'll probably change. Or Station Buzz, I think is my latest name for it. Maybe I'll put them out and let you guys elect what the name is. Whatever that mail list is, you'll see a little, it'll be lit up saying there's a new mail for you. It should be every day, every other day. And I want to keep it in character of the game. So if you're playing the game, it's not RP'd mail, but it's also not real life talking to you. So it's going to be somewhere in between where we tell you what's going on around you out there. In places you can't go. You can't go behind the curtain. We can, because we know people, and they tell us things. They don't tell us everything, but we try to put the puzzles together without really betraying them and hurting them, so they keep giving us information. And then we try to put that out so you guys know what's going on behind there. That's really what we try to do all the time. Right, so that email list, check it out. TalkingInStations.com, scroll to the bottom, put your email there. You can get that in real mail too if you want. That's just a matter of convenience. We'll have it in both. Try to keep it in character-ish so that you don't break immersion when you're... I really want to bring the news into EVE. I don't want to keep dragging people out of EVE, right? Everything that the meta does is to drag you out of the game so that you can talk and think about the game. And I just feel like that's weird. It always has been, but it's a matter of convenience. You can't always be in the client. But if we can get back into the client now that you can read mail on your phone and stuff like that, that would be a good place to put it. Put the emphasis back into the game, I think would be great. Okay, so that's it. That's a little, from the desk of Matterall report for the day. We'll see you Thursday. Don't forget, you have Talking in Stations midweek, which will be Thursday night. There has been a time change, so I won't say what the times are because I'm not exactly sure. And Eve is Dying is, I'll address this really quick. This is a huge topic. It's been around since 2005 or earlier, 2004. I think I saw the first posts that said Eve is dying, Eve is dying, Eve is dying. We all have an anxiety that we need to express. So we say Eve is dying all the time because we want to be the first one to say things are going wrong. But if you just step back for a moment, we're way past 10 years where that was a thing. EVE Online has a certain strata of players that will never leave it, and those are constantly coming and going. So there is a baseline that will always keep this game around until people decide, until something dramatic happens, which it hasn't yet. It's lived through a really bad misdirection with Incarna and the walking in station stuff that was supposed to happen. It's happened with Phoebe, very, very restricted travel nerfs, and it still managed to keep going. So those are some terrible hits that it's taken and still managed to keep going. Why? Because there is a strata of people that will always play EVE Online and always talk about it. And they don't even play other games, so they're not drawn to other games except, for recreation every once in a while. So EVE is dying, sure, you can keep saying that. One of the best answers to that I've ever heard was somebody said, EVE is dying, great, can I play my game now? And I just love that, because that's exactly how I feel. It's like, all right, we know it's dying. Now I just want to play the game. Is that cool with you? But if you think about it, that EVE is dying thing that people project out there is a fear that they have. I don't think they mean to, I don't really know what they're doing. I think there's different psychological reasons for saying EVE is dying. But one of them has got to be trying to fit into a group of people who recognizes a thing. So you're showing your authority on EVE by saying EVE is dying because it implies that you know what EVE is to understand that it's dying. And I think it's a real deception and a self-deception. And I also think it's completely inaccurate. Does EVE have less players? Yes. Why? Who knows? Maybe there's less bots. Maybe there are less people playing with multiple clients. Maybe somebody had a kid or 2 or 3 and has taken a couple years off, but is reading about it. Whatever it is, EVE isn't going away. So your investment is safe if you want to stick around. So I would recommend that if you feel like EVE is dying, keep it to yourself, because it doesn't help for people to be saying that. Because if you've ever seen animals in group settings, fear transfers. If you see one horse that gets nervous, they all get nervous. It's biological and natural. So by saying EVE is dying or whatever, I honestly think, I think I know where some of it comes from, but you are spreading that fear among people, creating destabilization among people. Now, it may affect people or it may not, because people kind of seem to go past it and whatever. But if it's doing that to a certain strata of people that is not the core of EVE Online that will always be here. It's people who could probably do something better if they wanted to. So, yes, MMOs have a challenge because a lot of MMOs do really well up front and then they tank because all the what do they call that? The threshold that they need to have goes away, and once that's broken and pierced, it feels empty, and that's what people don't want. All right, I'm rambling. Go to work. Yeah, I should go to work. And I don't think this is a ramble. I think it's something that I wanted to take on. I'm not gonna go much further with it, but I did want to say thank you guys very much. Support us, and that's your news check-in today. It's funny, when this is all ending is when the stream is going nuts, and it's really nice to see that kind of activity. So you guys typing in there, thanks a lot, appreciate it. That's all we got today. I'm gonna take off. I gotta go, but love you guys, and we'll talk to you in a couple days actually. All right, take care everyone. Bye bye.